All right, thanks for checking out this video. My name is Rob Steinbach. I am an Anglican church planter, and along with a small core group of folks, we are working on planting a new church in Kitsap, specifically down in Old Town Silverdale, called Shalom Anglican. Love for you to come gather with us. We actually meet on Saturday nights, and so there'll be some information about that at the end of the video. But each week I try to do a short devotional that is based on one of the passages that we'll be reading in our weekend service. And so today, I want to talk to you about listening to God. Um, what is it like to listen to God, or what is it like to maybe have a heart that has a disposition and an openness to hear from God? And so one of our passages this Sunday is 1 Samuel chapter 3, verses 1 through 20. This is the story of where Samuel is called to be a prophet. And really, the life of Samuel is fascinating, and even being back in chapter 1, reading about his birth story and all of that. So check that out. But for our passage, the writer begins by telling us that the boy Samuel was ministering to the Lord in the presence of Eli. He was dedicated to the temple, and he's with this priest, Eli. And it says that the word of the Lord was rare in those days, that there was no frequent vision. And so this was a dark time in Israel's history. There weren't many words from God. God was silent. And it seems that this is at least partially because Eli and his sons weren't walking in obedience to God, at least not fully, especially Eli's sons. These guys were wicked men. They were serving as priests as well, but they were using their position and their power as priests to just do what they wanted, to get what they wanted. They would approach those who were coming to worship at the temple with their offering, with their sacrificial lamb, for example, and they would demand to get the better cuts of meat from the offering before it was given to the Lord. And so the writer for Samuel points this out in chapter 2. They were also pursuing and sleeping with the women who served at the entrance to the temple. And so this was a dysfunction junction, right, that's happening in the temple. And so the writer of 1 Samuel is contrasting Samuel's heart and openness to God with the sin, really, of Eli and Eli's sons. And Eli sort of brought into this because he was just complacent. He wouldn't really deal with it. And so when you continue reading in 1 Samuel chapter 3, you read about this scene where Samuel is sleeping in the temple and he hears his name being called. And so he goes to Eli and he's like, "Hey, you called me." Eli's like, "I didn't call you." And this happens 3 times. Well, eventually Eli the priest realizes, maybe God is speaking to you, Samuel. And so the next time you hear your name being called, here's what I want you to do. I want you to say, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." And so that's what happens in the story. God speaks to Samuel again, and Samuel replies, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." And the Lord gives Samuel a word that he's to give to Eli. And so here's what I want to emphasize, though, for us. This has become a kind of prayer in the Christian tradition that embodies an openness to hearing from God. Because when you pray this prayer, it helps, open your heart to listen to the Lord. It's a gift to us in our lives. We can pray this prayer when we need to hear from God, when we're maybe stuck, when things are dark, when it seems like the word of the Lord is rare. And it isn't just about sort of praying these words, but again, it changes our heart. It's a heart's disposition to say, "Lord, I'm willing to hear from you. What do you have to say about this? I've been trying to do it my way, but speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." Friend, is this a prayer that you need to pray today? Maybe there's something that you're facing or something that you're fighting against or trying to fix on your own, but you aren't getting anywhere. And so this prayer, it allows you to invite God into the situation, to let go and to listen for his still small voice. When we pray this, we remember that we're the servant and he's the Lord, and that's good because sometimes we think we're the Lord. We want to tell God what we want. And And it brings us back into the right space. It reminds us that maybe it's time for us to listen instead of speak. Sometimes we think that God is absent, but it's we who are absent. We're caught up in our stuff. God is always present, but we're the one who's absent. We're the one who's running. And so again, this prayer, it's a wonderful gift to help us to listen. And I love this quote from David Benner, where he says that we do not pray so that we can get God's attention. We pray so that God will get our attention. We pray so that as our attentiveness to God increases, our souls may be shaped by the reality of God's constant, loving, self-revealing presence. And so I want to remind us today that God is speaking, but are we listening? And may we listen today. May we pray. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And thanks for spending a few minutes with me today in this devotional. Shalom.